2025 special meeting of the Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater Agency is called to order at 10 a.m. Andrew, would you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance, sir? Oh, wait, hold on. Okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Could we have roll call, please?
Chair Segovia,
Here.
Vice Chair Walsh,
Here.
Director Herrick,
Here.
Director Russo,
Here.
and Director Sauer.
Here.
Thank you. All right, approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion in a second to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Vice Chair Walsh,
Aye.
Director Herrick,
Aye.
Chair Segovia,
Aye.
Director Sauer,
Aye.
and Director Russo.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Moving on to public testimony. Public testimony is permitted at this time on the following sections of the agenda: presentation and introduction, information, committee reports, consent calendar, and any other matters within the agency's subject matter jurisdiction that are not included on the posted agenda. Do we have any cards?
Not for this item.
Okay. So we're good. Audience is good. Okay. Well, let's move on to presentation and introduction. Sam Essex, 10-year recognition.
Just wanted to congratulate Sam. Sam is a certified grade 4 operator and holds additional certifications in water treatment and distribution. He is consistently punctual, dependable, and ready to work, and is always willing to step in during an emergency. Sam is reliability and helpful nature makes him someone that the team can count on at all times. He is highly dedicated, generous, and sharing his knowledge and experience with staff, contributing positively to the development of the team. Sam is a valued member of our organization and a tremendous asset to the agency. And if you would step up, I'd like to present you with your. Please.
Thanks, sir. 10 more years.
10 more years. No.
Do we have any board discussion on this item?
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I would like to say I love your smile too. I got a big smile from you at the back of that. So congratulations on 10 years.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Sam.
Okay, moving on to information and committee reports. Item A, general manager's report. David.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick things. And I know last time we spoke about this, the Cactus Flats repair project, that the permit was expected, and we did actually receive that, or the Southwest Gas received that. So they should be starting work on that project to, again, repair the exposed lines, because there's two, their line and our line are exposed. So they'll be starting construction on it. Our part was really to help them with the permits and get that moving, and then move a couple of boulders when they decide to move in. So that's kind of our length of work on the actual project itself. I also wanted to point out, if you look at the percentages of flow for the member agencies, the percentages have finally flipped again. They normally flip about this time of year as the city gets busier with the visitor base. And you can see the city is now 48% of the flow, where 48.59, and the CSD is now 48.27. So it's finally flipped back the other way, which is something that we expected. And that actually concludes my presentation, unless there's any questions with regard to the general manager's report.
Have any questions? Looks like Larry does.
Larry does.
There was comment that legal had confirmed that we were responsible to fix the lines down the back. Was there ever any doubt?
So the lines, you meaning Cactus Flats? the Caltrans project?
No, the outfall line.
The outfall line, yes. So, the concern I had with it was we were given a permit in 1978 from the Forest Service to have our line down the backside, right? And then 2000 and the Caltrans had the same permit to have the Highway 18 back down there. The concern I had was back in 2019, they perfected that easement, emitted an easement instead of just a permit. So it actually turns into an easement. And in the documents for the easement, it said it's a non-exclusive easement. So my question to our attorney was, if it's a non-exclusive easement, how can they tell us that we're responsible to if they want to do some work down there, to be responsible financially for whatever work they want to do to protect our own line? But our attorney has come back and said, no, it's part of the state requirement when they perfect an easement that we are required to protect our own line, even though they're doing the work and they just got this easement in 2019.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other board questions? No, all right. Any discussion? Okay. All right. Moving on to Director Sauer's report on his leadership academy.
Yeah, so I attended the California Special Districts Academy in Monterey from November 16th to the 19th. I provided a short written summary to the board, so I'll keep my oral remarks brief. But one thing that, two themes came up. One of them was repeatedly how boards evaluate major capital and policy decisions under uncertainty. The emphasis was not only on the near-term financial impacts, but on understanding long-term risk, regulatory trajectory, opportunity costs, and risk tolerance when choosing between options. Another key takeaway was the importance of framing complex decisions with clear context. The Academy emphasized that discussions are more productive when they connect short-term costs to long-term objectives and strategic direction, rather than focusing on individual line items in isolation. Finally, I did attend a couple of interesting sessions on cybersecurity and AI governance. The key message there was it's no longer a niche IT topic, but rather something that needs to be routinely governed and discussed there, essentially. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll defer to the written summary.
Thank you for that summary.
Yeah, got it.
Any questions from the board?
How did they define short term?
Within 6 months, 3 to 6 months is the message that I got.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? No. All right. Moving on to Administrative Committee, we met on November 12th. Would you like to share, Larry? Or... No? Okay. Two of the items that are on the agenda today, one was a reorganization of the org chart, and we also discussed bringing on a maintenance worker to take care of things around here. So, and we agreed to bring it to the board, the full board, to discuss and vote on. Right. Any questions on that? No? All right. We will move on to consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion at the appropriate time. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If a detailed discussion is necessary, any governing board member may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Does anybody have an item they want to remove from the consent calendar?
No, I had a question about Brian.
Okay.
Do we have any choice in this, or do we?
No.
That's fine. Please, somebody.
All right. No items to be removed. Could I have a motion for the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
And a second?
I'll second.
And roll call, please.
Director Herrick,
Aye.
Director Sauer,
Aye.
Director Russo,
Aye.
Chair Segovia,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Walsh.
Aye.
Well, we have no old business. Moving on to new business. Resolution number R 14-2025, a resolution at the Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater Agency amending fees for the use of the boardroom. Bridget.
In 2004, the governing board first established fees for the use of the boardroom and revised that in 2005, so about 20 years ago. And then the policy was updated last in 2008. Over time, we've seen changes in how the boardroom is used and identified the need for clearer guidelines, specifically around user responsibilities, insurance, signage, and protection of agency facilities. As a result, we're proposing an updated boardroom use policy and fee schedule that better reflects our current needs and operational costs. The updated policy improves organization and clarity, clearly defines eligible uses, establishes consistent scheduling rules, and strengthens requirements related to safety, insurance, and cleanup. The boardroom does primarily remain the use for agency business while allowing limited use by government, nonprofit, and community organizations. We review policies and fee schedules from other local agencies, and based on that research, we're recommending an increase to the non-refundable fee use from $35 per use to $125 during normal business hours and $140 for after business hours. These fees help offset staff time associated with preparing the room, coordinating logistics, opening and closing the facility, and administrative processing. The refundable security and cleaning deposit remains in place to ensure that the room is returned in good condition. In addition, we recommend discontinuing access to the agency's audiovisual system. Without specialized training, changes made by outside users can be difficult and costly to identify and correct, often requiring consultant support. Overall, staff believes the proposed policy protects agency resources and ensures the boardroom can continue to be used responsibly and safely, and we recommend the board adopt the use policy and revised fee schedule.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Do we have any public comment on this item?
No.
Right, could I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve. I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Sauer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walsh,
Aye.
Chair Segovia,
Aye.
Director Russo,
Aye.
and Director Herrick.
Aye.
Okay, item number B. Reorganization, reclassification, pay schedule, and allocate 44,000 from the contingency fund for the maintenance worker. Sonia.
Yes, this item, we did meet with the administrative committee November 12th, and they recommended we bring it to the board. We would like, staff is recommending that we establish a maintenance worker position. This position would be kind of facility maintenance, cleaning, janitorial, and groundskeeping. Right now, a lot of those tasks are performed by plant operators, and it requires pulling them off of their regular duties to do these items. And we feel that having a designated employee to do this will improve our level of maintenance and cleaning. And tied with this, we anticipate that we can discontinue our cleaning service, janitorial service, and also landscaping service, and do it in-house. There's a recommended salary range of $23.84 to $32.19. That's based on researching the different comparable agencies and local agencies to kind of set a pay scale. We did consult with our compensation advisor, and she said she looked over the job description and agreed that it looked like an adequate pay scale. The second recommendation is changing the title of Administrative Services Manager, Board Secretary to Assistant General Manager, Board Secretary. This is basically a title only change. The job description and pay schedule will remain the same. The reason for doing this is to emphasize the responsibility and authority that this position has. It's already contained in the job description, but the title doesn't lend itself to really reflect the responsibilities and authority of the position. And what we're finding is it's not always taken, when this position is acting for the general manager, it's sometimes questioned because of the title. So changing the title would more adequately reflect the responsibilities and the authority of the position. Nothing else would change. The recommendations are to approve the maintenance worker class specification job description. We would need to allocate $44,000 from the contingency fund for the additional salary and benefits. The also recommending reclassification of the administrative services manager to assistant general manager, and approve the organizational chart and the fee schedule to reflect those changes.
And I just want to point out too, when we had our admin meeting, some of the costs of the maintenance worker are offset by the fact that we're not having to have a landscape person and a cleaning crew come up from down the hill. Correct. I just wanted that to be put out there, which was one of the reasons.
I'm not sure if they come from down the hill, but we are contracting with the service, and they have, and we've just been advised that they're going up in January. So, so it'll be more than the $24,000 difference. I think that's what we have in here.
All right. Do we have any questions? Larry just said yes.
Your consultant said that without an in-depth look, it sounded like a good pay range for the maintenance worker. But you have a regular annual review, and if it was found to be high, then there's a way to address that for a while, right? To bring it.
Yes, we will be doing a compensation study update in January.
Yeah.
And she did mention that, we can pin it down better then.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I don't have any cards.
Okay. All right. I'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion? Forever hold your peace. All right. Could I have a motion and a second for this item?
All motion.
Second.
So
Roll call.
Sauer and Walsh. Yeah. Okay. Director Russo,
No.
Director Herrick,
Aye.
Chair Segovia,
Aye.
Director Sauer,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Walsh.
Aye.
Now Larry can finally get that window painted that he's window framing.
It is painting.
Oh, it is. Oh,
Anymore.
yes.
Had they taken care of?
Yes.
Did you notice it? Yes, it's painted. I'll show you.
I saw it as a kid.
Oh, we saw it. All right, let's move on to item C, Replenish Big Bear preliminary financial impact project cancellation or continuation with final design. David.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to turn this over to WSC and let them take the lead on presenting the options for the board to consider. And then, of course, staff will be available for any questions.
It's green.
Yes.
I'm Lane Carlson with WSC, Program Manager for Replenish Repair. And I have, it's a short presentation, really, and discussion to provide some additional context for this item as we consider this decision. So I want to just start with, just to reflect a little bit on where we've been. We've been working on this program for about 10 years now. And the goal of Replenish Maker has always been to capture local supply and create a new high quality water source that can be used in multiple ways throughout the valley to provide different beneficial uses. And we've been advancing in that direction. And we're now at a really key milestone where the preliminary design report is essentially complete. That brings you to a 30% level of design. And there have been many hurdles along the way, and it has taken longer than we all hoped that it would, which is actually typical of large programs like this. But I do want to reflect on the incredible progress that has been made. Securing over $26 million in grants with additional opportunities ahead is really difficult to do. And while it isn't enough, really, it doesn't feel like enough. It is a lot relative to what other programs have been able to. And completing the piloting and preliminary design report gave us a lot of good information, a high level of confidence that we had identified a treatment process that could meet the most stringent water quality regulations that we have seen in the country, and an advanced brine treatment process that would be a really sophisticated way for an inland agency to manage brine, which is one of the hardest things for non-coastal agencies to do for reuse projects. And the regional board permit to discharge to the lake, well, we don't have that in hand yet. There has been a lot of technical work, coordination, negotiation done to date, and we're in a place where they are willing to write a permit. And that was not easy, and that was not a given that the program would get there. And so that would be foundational to the agency's ability, the team's ability to impact the program. And so, from this point forward, there would be a lot of work still ahead. There would be still a lot of hurdles, I'll be honest. And most notably, the construction market for this kind of work is still quite volatile. We are still seeing some unpredictable things happening with costs. And so, while VARVA could also likely secure additional grants through things like Prop 4 and other funding agencies, that's not guaranteed. And we can't guarantee the cost either. And so there are some significant challenges still ahead. And so what we're really talking about today is, with this understanding, if the board is no longer aligned around, pursuing full construction and operation of the project, and working through the challenges, the cost issues, all of the things that are probably still going to come up on this path towards completion, then it may be best to close out the program at an earlier milestone. And that's really what we're talking about today. There's 3 options in the staff report. I'll go through each of those briefly. And ultimately, the recommendation is option 1, which is to stop at the PDR, which is the milestone that we've reached now as of December. And we'll discuss the reasons for that recommendation. And I know this is a big decision. It's been a long time coming. And so I do just want to share some thoughts that even if option 1 is selected by the board today, I think it would still be a really significant win for the Valley. For 60 years, Big Bear's water managers, Borrow Board, and other agencies have been exploring ways to make reuse possible in the Valley to keep this water source local. And there have been a lot of challenges: regulatory, cost, perception, all of those things. And over the last 10 years, the teams working together, including your partners, CST, DWP, MWD, have made a lot of progress. All of the concepts that have been evaluated in the past have been at a concept level, which engineers would consider like about a 3% design. And we're now at 30% design for the Boardroom project. And so that is a huge leap forward in terms of our understanding of what it would take and how much it would cost to do a project like this in the Valley. And along the way, that progress has provided answers to a lot of really important questions. What are the regulatory requirements? What does our quality have to be? Can technology even meet that? How much would that cost? Do we have the legal right to reduce our discharge to a certain valley, or the environmental impacts? All of those things we now have much clearer answers to. There is still uncertainty, but there is a lot of valuable information now that even if preliminary design report is the milestone that you choose to stop at, it really will set future leaders up in a good place to really have a solid foundation. They'll have a lot more information than this book did starting out. And so I just want to say that I think there's a lot to be proud of, a lot of hard work, a lot of time and energy that has been put into getting to this milestone. And so with that, I'll kind of briefly walk through the three options. The staff report lays out option one, as I mentioned, is cancel the project following completion of the PDR, unwind, and close out. Option two would be to proceed with final design, but the implication would be not to go to construction, just have a final design document. And three would be construct the project. And so I'm going to start with option three because that has always been the end in mind that we've been working towards over this time. And so, to continue down this path, the program team would continue to advance various implementation steps that are needed for those are outlined in detail there's a matrix that's attached to your staff report. I'm not going to go through all of those things right now, but I've covered, just highlighted a few of them on this slide. And there are a lot of key and difficult decisions that the board would have to continue to make to continue to move down this path. And most notably would be the WIFIA, right? Or any other, which does require a one-fifth vote to move forward. And so, pretty broad board alignment, right? An agreement to continue down this path would be needed. And at the August 27th meeting, the board considered the WIFIA loan, and ultimately it did not pass. And so without enough support to pass construction funding like that, constructing the project wouldn't be viable, right? And so for that reason, we're providing two other options for consideration. And as I mentioned, ultimately recommending option one. So option two, I'm coming back first here. Option two is to proceed with final design. And I do want to point out that we have been talking throughout this year about maybe proceeding with final design, but what's being presented today is a little bit different. So I'm going to highlight the reasons why. This originally came up, talking about cost uncertainty and the potential for, additional cost increases and the fact that as we further progress in design, we have a higher level of confidence in what the scope is and also a higher level of confidence in the cost estimate. And unfortunately, that has resulted in cost increases, right? The engineer's estimate most recently. So, and then also the discussion was that the ultimate measure of the project cost would be the construction bids, right? If you get to the point where you're putting it out to bid, you get updated engineer's estimates along the way. They improve in confidence and in accuracy. And then ultimately the construction bid is the decision, right? Is how much money would this cost and do we do that? And so we talked about moving forward with final design wouldn't commit you to construction, but it would move you further along that road. And if that final design and bids, the costs were coming in within an acceptable budget, that the board could decide to go to construction at that time. And so based on the assumption that the WIFIA loan could be in place and that there would potentially still be a consideration to go to construction, there are grants in place that would allow you to get through final design with very little financial, net financial cost to borrow. However, the circumstances around that have changed, and because we no longer see a viable path to construction, we wouldn't recommend using the Title 16 grant towards design, because you would probably have to pay it back. So you'll see in the staff report that there is a cost difference between option 1 and option 2. And the reason is because of kind of a shift in the recommended grant strategy to reduce borrowers' financial risk. And I think that amount is about 1.2, and we can talk about that in more detail, 1.2 million. We'll talk about that in more detail if you have questions as we go through. And as you know, if the project does not go to construction, then there is a risk that the IRW and grant funds that have been spent to date would have to be paid back. And there are still some additional funds left in that grant. So if we keep going, we're going to spend more of those grant funds that then increases the risk of repayment. That's all reflected in the staff report. And then finally, the key thing we really are going to focus on today is the STAG grant. So that's 2.96 million. And this funding source is the one that you could use to cover most of the design costs, the final design costs. But this one is unique because if you don't end up using it for the original purpose, which is Replenish Bigger final design, you can rescope it and apply those funds towards other eligible projects that may already be in the borrower CIP. And so you can offset the use of ratepayer funds for other CIP projects. This is the only grant that works that way. And so because of that opportunity, we're really looking really closely at what are the trade-offs for that. And, what is the best use of those STAG grant funds? And so I'll draw this conclusion at the end, but that really is the difference between option 1 and 2. How to use the STAG grant. It can be boiled down to that simple. So if option 2 is selected to proceed with final design, we recommend taking a more narrow approach than, full final design as if you're going to construction, because there's some, third-party coordination, things like, getting an easement from CST for the pipeline to the lake. That just doesn't feel like it would be productive to do that right now. Pre-selecting treatment equipment is something that we would have done, but also wouldn't be productive to do right now because, if the project is tabled and picked up later, technologies could change. And so ultimately, that would really have value. So if you do want to proceed with option 2, we would actually recommend just narrowing the focus to the in the fence on the borrower site improvements. Those are things that you have more control of, that don't require a lot of external coordination, but would provide more level of detail and cost confidence on that item, which is the highest cost part of the project anyway. And so even with that more limited scope for final design, there is still a risk that portions of that design, if completed now, depending on how much time passes, would no longer be applicable. So there could be regulatory changes, there could be building code changes that would require portions of it, not the whole thing, but portions of it to be redesigned in the future. And so because of kind of the change in funding strategy and the risk that some of that would have to be redone anyway, we don't recommend option 2. That's why we're not recommending option 2, even though we have discussed some benefits in the past. Enough has changed about the trajectory that we no longer see a really significant value there. So that brings us to option 1, which still has the risk of having to repay the IRW grant that's been spent today. But if you stop now, it reduces that risk, right? It minimizes the amount that borrower might have to fund from project reserves. And the STAG grant, we've submitted that application to use those funds for final design, but it hasn't been finalized. That grant agreement is not in place yet. So you could pivot within that process relatively quickly to apply those funds to other CIP projects. EPA would have to determine which projects were eligible, but we're confident that there would be, some borrowed CIP projects would be eligible and we could work with them to figure that out. So the PDR is a very reasonable place to stop. It's a completed deliverable. It would give us a clear and defensible story to work with the grant agencies on and to hopefully reduce the risk or the amount that would have to be repaid. Because it's a really understandable story, right? Where you're proceeding in good faith down this path. You got to a milestone, you got to move on, and change the decision. That's something I think that they would understand. And so if you do go down that path, we would work with those agencies to minimize the grant repayment in any case. And so, if the project is tabled now or restarted at some point in the future, the PDR would be solid starting place for any future design team to pick up. They would have to recheck codes, recheck technology, recheck regulations. But there's a lot of information in there that would be usable, and they wouldn't be in the position of redoing detailed design documents. So that's one of the reasons that we feel like option one would add option. So this comparison of options, this is actually the last slide. We do have in this PowerPoint, if there are any questions, discussion points, we have all of the information that's presented in the staff report. We can go there and you can answer any questions, talk through detail. I'm not going to walk through all of them though. So you can see with this summary that there is a cost difference if you go all the way down to the grand total. Those numbers do include repayment of IRW1 because that is, that is a risk, and so those are kind of the maximum ROI investments. And on that grant repayment line, you can see what would you be working to hopefully recover, right, the grant agencies. And so there's a difference between option one and option two, about $1.1 million, and that's because you can see we wouldn't be using any grants besides IRW1. We wouldn't recommend that at this point. And so really just in summary, option three has been the goal, but it doesn't appear to be feasible to get to option three at this point, full implementation. And so if that's the case, then between options one and two, this is where it really boils down to. Option two, you can use your STAG grant to advance final design and to get one further deliverable. But there is a risk that some of that have to be redone in the future. Option one, you could use your STAG grant, $2.96 million, and redirect it towards other CIP projects that would otherwise be funded through rates. And so I hope it's helpful to kind of boil it down to something that's, well, there are clearly a lot more considerations, and we've tried to lay those out here in the staff report. But that, when we were thinking about it, that really bubbled to the top for us, is, what is the value of that grant? How can we use that to really advance our projects, whether it's this one. So, now I will say that it is not 100% certain that you can rescope the STAG grant. However, we're highly confident that that would be possible. EPA staff told us directly that that is possible. That's something they're open to doing. And so we're pretty confident that that would be something that could be done fairly quickly. And they're looking to move quickly as well. So they would want, I think, early next year to understand, okay, what would be the project you're proposing, and understanding and confirming eligibility. So that actually concludes the presentation. I just want to reiterate that, even if the decision is to stop now, I think I just want to recognize the hard work of this agency and your partner agencies. And I think you really are, you've done a lot to advance these concepts, answer these questions, and set the valley up for water reuse, whether that's now or whether it's later. So with that, if there are any questions, happy to answer. Matt, Christine, Barbara, staff, we can collectively answer any questions today.
Questions? Larry's smiling at me, so he must.
Do I have a question? Can you hear me? Thank you. The question that I have regarding the presentation that we just got, I'd like to know what the best, one moment, please. Sorry, getting a little background noise. I'd like to know the best option for, I'll call it the future, and I can see the cost differences, and I understand the risks involved. But so that we have the most deliverable option in the future, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, as opposed to what it looks like we're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And it's obviously disappointing because we've come so far with this, with previous complete support from all member agencies to most recently not, and getting to the point where I'll just flat out say it, a minority can actually stop the project because we need a 4/5 vote. And so it's not even the majority that are looking at stopping the project. It's a minority, but that's how our rules are written. So I guess the question that I have, then I have a follow-up question, is for the future, looking into the future, even with the expenses and the possible risks, what is the best place for us to, and I'm not going to say stop, but pause, because I wholly believe that this project will either be forced on us or out of necessity because we lose our fallout line. We'll have to do something. And we can't set a policy where we just continue to pollute somebody else's watershed down in Lucerne Valley. I think that's going to have to stop at some point. So looking to the future, is there a good pause point, whether it's full design or if it's preliminary design? That's my question. I have a follow-up as well.
Okay, yeah. Depending on, the length of a prospective pause, if it's a short period of time, then, maybe a lot of things about the final design, or maybe all of it, are still applicable. But when we think about pausing and then restarting, we're thinking about the final design, but also everything else that it would take to be able to move forward, which includes having funding in place. And that's something that, grant and loan agencies are looking for as well, is, do you have, the agency funding in place? And so, it's taken quite a few years to get to this point, but the reason that we think, pausing at PDR would be, really just as productive, as final design, but at a lower cost, is that at some point in the future, if the project is restarted, you would need to advance. You need to either complete your final design or recheck and update it if you've already done it. And in parallel, you need to get all of the funding in place. And that takes, what do you think, Christina? I mean, at least 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Potentially longer. And so 2 years is enough time to complete the final design. And so you could, in the future, do those things in parallel, without losing any time. And you would have more information about, you could incorporate current codes, regulatory requirements, all of those things at that time. And so I think from that perspective, that's where we say right now, moving towards final design isn't as valuable in the long run, as it might seem, because you'll have to recheck it anyway, and you have to spend the time to get the funding in place. So I think that the speed at which you can move forward in the future is about the same, if you pause at PDR or pause at final design, but you can avoid potentially some rework. Does that answer your question?
It does, but let me throw another twist on it. If, or I should say when, I don't think it's an if, we get to the point where we have to do some sort of tertiary treatment, isn't there a benefit to us having a final design, because that will include the tertiary portion of it, and possibly make it easier to look at moving forward at that point as well, if we have the final design? Or does that matter? It seems to me that if we get a final design, at least we have something, especially in the short run, that I'll call it deliverable, or that we can possibly have it viewed differently so that we could have the 4/5 vote in a short period of time, understanding that we have all these incredible expenses that are being forced on us, and which could also be the fallout line. Anyways,
Okay, yes.
hopefully I structured that as a question enough for you.
It's okay. I'll just confirm to make sure I understand where you're going with it. So there could be other external drivers, other regulatory changes or requirements that would cause Barwood to go to some higher level of treatment in the future. We've talked about this. We don't know when, that may occur. And so if at some point you do need to go to, say, tertiary, I think the question is, wouldn't having final design help us along that path? Even if we don't do the whole program or the full advanced treatment, it would at least show us what that portion looks like, and maybe you would be part of it. Is that along the lines of what you're asking? I'm going to ask.
Yes, I'm trying to be the most efficient with the money that's been spent to this point. And although we have to spend more, would we have to start basically over again, or do we have something that we could use to at least take the first steps? And even if we don't do the full treatment, we actually have something that we can actually use, whether it is, again, 6 months, a year, or 5 years down the road, something that this whole exercise would have not been a complete waste of time and money.
Right. So even if it's a little more really focusing on what is the additional value that could be produced with final design, and that is exactly the question that we've been thinking about. Now, can I ask you to weigh in on that question about sort of tertiary advancing towards final design?
Yeah. Hi, Director Eric. So the two things come to mind. First is that the peak flows to this facility exceed 10 million gallons per day during wetwater flows, which is what would need to be conveyed, even through a tertiary treatment system down to Stern Valley. So
I hate to say this, but if I can interrupt you for a second, it's hard to understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can get closer to the mic or if there's some other technical issue.
Can you hear me at all? That's
better. Thank you.
Okay. I was mentioning that our advanced treatment system for replenished big bear is only sized at 2.2 MGD, but the facility receives upwards of 10 MGD during wet weather flows. So even if we had to go to tertiary for discharge to the Stern Valley, there would still be another really designed back, separate design to cover that gap in average flow versus peak flows. Another point is that the tertiary system that's tacked on to the replenished big bear advanced treatment system may not necessarily be the right fit for what a tertiary treatment requirement would be in the Stern Valley. For instance, the ultrafiltration membranes for the advanced treatment facility are required as a pre-treatment step for the RO system, but a tertiary treatment advancement for the Stern Valley discharge could be something like cloth filters with a lot less energy intensive and improvements to the aux stitches to improve nutrient removal. So it's not the same equivalency of tertiary, it's the same step of treatment, but a tertiary treatment scheme for the Stern Valley discharge, not necessarily the tertiary treatment scheme that we've ended up with for this process.
Understand. Okay, the last question I have, because I can't see it from here, so I'm going to ask Bridget if she could read our mission statement and understand that this is kind of what brought us to this focus in the first place, with unanimous consent from all the member agencies of what our focus was at the time and in the future. If you could read that so I can hear that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Our mission is to efficiently collect, treat, and beneficially reuse wastewater and biosolids in an environmentally and fiscally responsible manner.
I think there was a little bit more to it, but was that the short version?
No, but that's the whole mission statement. It's hanging here in the boardroom.
Right.
But you might be talking about like our vision and our goals and our strategic objectives, which go a little bit.
It could be. I quickly just looked it up. And it seemed a lot longer than that. But anyways, that's the basics that we've all kind of agreed to move forward. So, with that and knowing that, and as things evolve, looking at just, again, stopping the project, I would be in favor of pausing the project. But again, things evolve, things change. Sometimes they change quickly. And I don't want there to be any assumption that we are doing something that cannot be, I'll say, resurrected or looked at in the future. And we tie the hands of future boards by making a decision that is basically, I'll say, just improper. I mean, we really should not be doing something that would stop future boards from taking any action moving forward with it. With that, I've got comments, but I'll save that for the comment portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Candy suggested that we should reach a point at which we would have shelf-ready plans for the future. How long would you guess that anything we produce right now might be viable? I'm asking you for your crystal ball.
Yeah, to be clear, you're asking for what we have completed now, how valuable would the PDR be? Or
If we were to do final design.
if we were to do final design? So how long would a final design be
Good for.
useful for?
Yeah.
If I'm just speaking from an engineering perspective, which is all my crystal ball can tell, because I can't tell you what regulators do or what may happen with lake management engineering scenario. I would say probably up to 2 years. I would say a year or two, be my guess. But the tricky part about that is you're not the only agency aggressively pursuing this kind of water reuse with this level of treatment. You're not the only facility that's been dealing with brine management, certain through issues with that solution in place. So I could say that right now, and the new technology could come out tomorrow that was more viable than we have now.
If you could just speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
Please, no.
It's a low register for old people. Here comes up with it. Then the other side would be, we've never committed to a plan that said the outfall line would be abandoned. It was still something to, maybe on a heat year, a wet year, we could send treated water down.
That's correct. At this point, and again, unless we, I don't know if we have made a decision on exactly where the water ultimately will end up, whether it's spreading around or into the marsh. I don't know the board made that final decision on what they would like to do with the water in the end. But that is 100% true that there are times during peak season, rainfalls or whatever comes up, there are times that we still need to use that outfall line. The outfall line is 50 years old, right? So we can't predict exactly what condition the outfall line is in. It is something that's on our capital improvement plan to investigate. And so obviously that's something that we want to continue to pursue to ensure that we at least have a discharge, but at this point, it wasn't part of the plan to abandon that line. There is an option. I'll talk about it. Lane's going to go. There is an option that to someday put it in Baldwin Lake because it is part of our current permit. I think it's disinfected, right? Is that right?
88 feet.
It's a small amount, but that, again, still having that option is something that Lane and I have talked about to that we would want to write into a new permit to continue to have that option to put it into Baldwin Lake should something happen to that outfall line. But there is an option for that in our concept for that. Again, we haven't made any ultimate decisions on spreading grounds and, you know, where new technology might take this entire project. Eventually, should the board decide to either, you know, to move forward with it at some point. But we can't again predict that overall condition of that outfall line.
And then I'm not sure which question it would be. Current proposal is less than 25% of the replenished product to be put back in the round table.
The current proposal was, I thought it was a 20%. Is that that was about 500 acre feet?
Total amount of purified water produced.
200 acre feet.
Yeah, about the 500 total would be used for groundwater recharge. So that's what you're talking about, 25%, right?
Less than.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Now, when I asked about increasing that so that we weren't putting so much in the lake to be lost, then the response was that changing the project description might disqualify us from some of these grants. Because we were talking about recreation, benefit to flora and fauna, etc. So if we didn't put as much in the lake, then there might be a challenge to say, well, you no longer qualify for some of the grants.
I mean, we have both listed to recharge to put water into the lake and to recharge the aquifers. We have both of those in the.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
In the actual Title 16 and the actual grant proposals. Correct me if you think that would be a.
So if you were to eliminate the lake discharge, and there could be a risk because those benefits were part of the high scoring that got you those grants, some of those grants, yes. That's something that it creates a risk we'd have to deal with, discuss with the grant agencies. If you were to reduce the amount that goes to the lake and instead use some for additional recharge applications, I wouldn't be as concerned about that because you'd still be producing some level of those ecological benefits, and those are hard to quantify. So the grants really aren't based on, I would say, the quantification of how much goes in the lake as much as it is just the description of those benefits. So I think that the project could be evolved to, because really what the Barwell project does is creates this the highest imaginable quality of recycled water so they can use it for different things. And so if you were to decide to use it for additional groundwater recharge, that is absolutely possible. We've talked about this. There'd be some additional costs. You have to build the pipeline in the recharge basin, relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. So the main concern I would have with the grant eligibility would be if you were to completely eliminate any discharge to the marsh. That's a higher risk than just reducing, basically using more of the water for groundwater recharge. I think that grant agencies would actually be quite supportive of something like that. But those are discussions that we would have to have. So I think limited risk to make some changes to how the water gets used.
Especially with the Bureau of Reclamation, because that's one of their charge is to recharge aquifers, and that's like very, very high on the priority list. So I agree with Lane, that wouldn't be a problem.
Additional ecological benefits were kind of bonus points, but really, using the water for groundwater recharge is a very high value. Right?
And you don't see it being problematic that the request that we not dump the water in the marsh, but take it directly to Stainfield, then that would seem to be reducing the claimed benefits to the environment.
Oh, are you talking about the discussion to potentially be able to bypass the marsh and go directly to the lake instead of through the marsh?
They didn't want us growing extra weeds.
It's the MWD request.
Yeah, I see that as an adaptive management measure. I don't necessarily think that discussion was leading towards not putting any water in the marsh, because they're connected anyway. If the lake levels are high, the water will go in the marsh. I think it was more of having the flexibility to move that discharge location if needed, potentially for short periods of time, to enable maintenance or some sort of corrective action that could occur in the future. We don't know exactly, which weeds are going to grow where, or if it's going to be a problem. And so I think what MWD was expressing was just the desire for flexibility so that they could address those issues if they were to come up. And so that change, I also don't think has any impact on the benefits that you can claim in terms of the grants. I think it just adds operational flexibility that would strengthen the program overall. And we didn't add that pipeline to the scope because that's not the only way you could adapt. And so, something that we were thinking about, but yeah, so that specific one, I don't have any concerns with regard to grant benefits.
Well, my concern is if we were to spend 3.8 million more to move that line and essentially shoot ourselves in the foot, and the powers that be said, oh no, you're not meeting the qualifications you originally claimed. So you don't see that as a problem?
I don't, because I think that upon startup, if you get, through construction and you do startup, I think the intent was still to begin by discharging to the marsh. And at some point, if any issues were to arise with that, and again, it's not known that would happen, then one of the ways that you might address that could be a temporary pause and say, okay, let's stop putting more water in the marsh right now, we'll just put it in the lake. Or maybe we just pause for a couple of months so we can dry it up, get in there and do some maintenance, and then roast it, that sort of thing. So I think that grant agencies do understand that adaptation is required for projects like this. And so again, I don't have concerns about, if those adaptations were to be added to the project. I don't think from a grant agency's perspective, they would have concerns about that, or that it would impact, what you said you were doing. I think it's still substantially the same with an added benefit of adaptation.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. Where are we at right now with all the motions and directions that have been given if we do nothing? I mean, if we just, whatever things have been decided at meetings, can it just continue going forward?
I mean, the board, at this point, the board has elected to move forward with design of the entire project. That would continue. But again, and that would continue until we completed design. Not even 2, it would be basically part of 3, which is basically everything that we have on the books right now. So that's what would continue to happen, because the board did award a contract and agree to the design of the project. And the board also adopted the rate structure to put in place, and so that would continue as well. So it would basically, the project, if the board did nothing today, or the majority of the board did nothing today, the design would continue and the project would continue. And then when the design was complete, that would take additional board action to get grant funds get construction funds, finance plan in place to move forward with bidding the project at that point.
So right now we're set up to get it to final, but not to do what Lane was talking, which would be to get it to final in number two with some changes that we would get value out of.
Yeah, our current scope of our design contract is to final design, including the pipeline to the lake.
Including permits, including.
Yeah, it would add uncertainty for us on what was the right thing to do. If we were to follow our scope to the letter of the scope, we would go all the way to final design. And typically we would also be seeking easements from CST, most notably from the airport. There are some private property owners that, that the ideal pipeline alignment would require easements from. And so we would typically do those things. And we could do those things.
So it sounds like number two gives you more certainty. You're getting it to some form of final, but there are some things you would not do that you would do in final.
Yeah, I mean, if we get you to final based on the current scope, but I think there would still be a fair bit of uncertainty on how far do we take it, right? Do we go get the permit from Fish and Game? Do we do all of those things? Is that a good use of our money? We have the money in our contract, we could do it, but we're also trying to be good stewards of your money. And so it would leave a lot of ambiguity for us, which is, yeah.
Not ideal. I mean,
Not ideal.
Not ideal. I mean, the whole point is that, the bottom line is we can't, if we can't ever get to construction, the reality, there is no reason to do two. Right? If there's no way to ever get to a point where the full board is, or 4/5 of the board is going to decide to move to construction. Two is, Matt said, he'll get to design and it might be a year or two before that's still useful. And then after that, it may not be useful anymore. That's spending money and grant money that we could be used other places and Embarwa's capital plan. It's not really not my recommendation at this point. I couldn't use, and at this point, we haven't gotten a kind of consistent feel that the board is willing to move forward with construction financing. That's just the reality of that. And if they're not, if the board is, we can't get that 4/5 vote, then I can't really recommend, continuing down this line, because it is, the gas and the brake. I used that term before. It is kind of the gas and the brake. I'd love to see this project move forward, because I think there's some real value to it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, climatologists and hydrologists will tell you that, this drought in California is going to continue. And that's a true fact, right? They're all predicting what they predict. There is a likelihood at some point in time, the water that we have to treat, that we put down in Lucerne, is going to be at a higher treatment level. And that's fact. I mean,
that is a fact. I mean, we could find out
next year,
January
5 years,
that,
we could.
Didn't clamp down on, and we must do this.
We must do that. That doesn't mean, by the way, like the water that we put down there we wouldn't have to treat to a higher level, even if for, this, say, any excess flow that we create during the project. I mean, overall, I would just say there's no guarantees in any of this. And, Lane said it, right? Look, we can't predict where the cost is going on this project. We can't predict. It is really comes down to, this is a resource. We have one, and this resource, water resource, is the only one that we have in the valley. If that is important to this board and important to this valley, then this is the project for the board to consider. That's fact. If we can't get the entire board, or at least 4/5 of the board, to go in that direction, then, I would recommend stopping at the PDR. And that would be my recommendation. I don't think, especially, with, almost $3 million worth of grant funds that could be used somewhere else for this agency. It's not fiscally responsible. And, I don't want to just keep coming back to the board with decisions that they have to make during this process to make this project progress. And I can't get the votes that we need to move forward.
I'll just add that I think, stopping at the PDR is not, I'll say pause for a director. Pausing at the PDR is not, as I mentioned, it's not no progress. It is significant progress. And it really, I think a PDR would actually provide future leaders with more flexibility on how to move forward after a pause. Because as we're talking about here, it may be that, say there's a pause and then when it's reconsidered, there might be other drivers that we don't have right now. It could be the forever chemicals, right? The treatment process can't remove them. It could be that. It could be, some other new regulation. And depending on the exact circumstances at that time, and then maybe a change in the desire to put water, maybe less water in the lake, more water in the ground, you would still have all of that flexibility. The PDR lays out the treatment process needed to get the quality to a level that could be used for any and all of those things, including PFAS removal. But if you move forward with final design, you've actually locked in a little more on this exact solution. And it may be that if you pause now and reconsider later, a variation of this solution is what you actually want to go with. And so, the PDR really kind of gives you a blueprint for where to go from there. And then you would, you can move forward with final design of maybe something slightly different, right? Probably a substantially similar treatment process, because that's just what you have to do to meet the regulations, but maybe different uses. And maybe you treat more of it because you don't want to send as much down to the Bluestone Valley because those regulations are tight. There could be a different combination of factors. And so that's why we also, as the design engineer and program manager, feel like option one is a good solution right now. I think it does represent significant progress. I think you would be in future years with a really good blueprint and path forward. And then they would have to consider how to address additional constraints and factors that arise during their tenure.
It's a hard decision.
I know. Yeah, and I know that there's been a lot of just energy and investment in this, and so we recognize it's our decision, provided you with the information that you need.
Any other board comments at this time?
No question.
Okay.
For several years, a chart has been generated and given as part of presentations that says population growth versus water production decline impacts or intersects at about 2069. Is that still true?
Yes. No updates to GSP. Okay. Yes. If you'd like to see that graph, we do have it in the pocket slide. It basically the groundwater sustainability plan that the GSA completed projects that if groundwater pumping and growth were to continue at a similar trajectory, that even though that's below the safe field of the basin now, the projections are, as David was mentioning, that the safe field of the basin will decline over time by 2070 because of projections around reduced rainfall, and maybe more rainfall and less snow, which means you can't get quite as much in the ground. So a combination of those factors. And so those lines do converge in the graph you're talking about. They start to converge around 2070, incorporating a projected decline in safe field over there's uncertainty in those projections as well. It could happen sooner than that. It could happen later than that. The long-term climate projections are their projections, right? And they're updated. So, it's around the 2070 timeframe. And so, recharge, even at the 500 acre feet that's contemplated as part of the program now, that would extend the amount of time, the distance between those lines by quite a bit. If you were to decide to do additional recharge, that would create an even larger buffer. And so it is still something, the safe yield of the groundwater basin versus the demands is still something to keep a close eye on. And that's the job of the GSA, and there's the annual reports. And so that will continue to have continued close eye on those trends.
Thank you.
All right, I think if there's no other questions from the board at this moment, we'll take public comment.
Joe?
Good morning, board. My name is Joe Sillick. I'm a resident of Hoskin. I'm a registered civil engineer, and I'm also a commissioner on the DWP board. Recently, I attended a ACWA conference. ACWA stands for the Association of California Water Agencies. I want to share with you a few observations, a few comments from the various presentations I participated in. ACWA and its consultants and scientists working on water issues forecast long, drier future. They forecast a greater reliance on storage. They forecast intensely dry periods with short, intensely wet years. Therefore, the need for greater storage. We in Big Bear do not have a pipeline that can bring water up to us. So we only have what we have locally, and we don't have resources from down the hill that we can bring up. Also, as mentioned earlier, someday in the future, we won't be able to disperse our water in the Lucerne. Requirements could be significantly higher, and it'll have to be treated to a potable level. So for these reasons, Replenish Big Bear is still important for the future of Big Bear. So just want to thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
No other cards?
No.
All right, I will bring it back to board for discussion on a motion. Rick, chime in if you have anything.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to follow up, and maybe this is a question or a comment for Lane, because the question regarding the fallout line keeps coming up over and over again. We don't have a solid answer on potential future costs, but the fact of the matter is, maybe you can back this up, is that if it is used to a much lesser extent, it would extend the life of that pipe. Is that true? Did you hear me okay? So the point is that I mean, I don't know how many millions of gallons we put down a day average, but it's in the millions that go down there. And just the friction of the water going down eventually eats away at that pipe. We've had to replace pipes here in town just because of gases that have eaten through the pipe. The pipe is not going to last forever, and it will actually wear itself out much faster if it is used at its present level right now. And again, whether it'll last for a year or 10 years or 20 years, eventually it'll have to be relined or have to be failed. But the only way we're really going to find out is by spending money and opening the pipe up every X amount of yards so we can get cameras down and get a true idea of what condition that pipe is in. I mean, 40, 50 years old, that's an old pipe. And even though it's probably a great pipe, that's an old pipe. And then if we do have a failure, what is the expense of that? It has to be huge. We have no backup. We have nothing else that we can really do except maybe put it all in Baldwin Lake. But I don't think that is going to be an environmentally sustainable thing to do for any length of time. So at this point, I can't move forward with any of the options in my mind. They're all poor options until we find out really this fall line, I think is such an important piece of the Barwa process that unless we really address it and look at it, what is the present day cost of replacing the pipe and get a really good solid estimate of what that is, even relining the pipe, even what is the cost for us to inspect this pipe. So if we make decisions right now and we don't consider the future with this fallout line, let alone all the other benefits of reusing our water here, again, which is our mission, I think we're making a mistake. And I think we need to have possibly maybe bring this back again, but also with the other costs of making these decisions. So it's not done in a vacuum. And so that it satisfies basically, I'll call the majority of this board who wants to move forward with the project, as opposed to the minority who's kind of, we'll say, has the purse strings at this particular moment, so that we can just make a proper decision. And I hope we make a proper decision as opposed to something that, a year from now, 5 years from now, we totally regret that we let this opportunity pass by. And we let it pass by based upon, and obviously millions of dollars is a lot of money, but I haven't heard, we're talking about using this possible funds and shifting it over to some other project. I don't even know what that other project is. So how can I possibly make a decision that that's a great idea until we know what that project is? So there's too many question marks in my mind at this point right now. We have a direction that's been given to management what to do at this point, and until we find out a better path, which I don't see it at this particular moment, to make these massive decisions, how can we do anything else? Those are my comments.
I can speak a little to the, your questions about the, or commentary on the outfall line. Those are all things that we are thinking about. So as David mentioned, we don't have detailed information on the condition of that line right now. And so it's planned in the CIP to do some field investigation to look at that. And then some planning around, okay, when do we think investments might be needed? Is it relining? Is it spot repairs? It really depends on the condition. So step one is a condition assessment, and that's programmed in the CIP. And so, I will, so to your question, Director Herrick, is would putting less water down there elongate the life? It's possible, because one of the things that we think about in terms of pipeline condition is the speed at which, the velocity at which the water moves down that pipe. And there are some very steep segments of it to get down the hill. And so when the water goes really fast and it has some material in it, it can scour the bottom of the pipe, right? So it could start to make that wall thinner. And so that's one of the things that we're looking for when we're doing a condition assessment, is targeting areas where we think the velocity is the highest, and is there a reduction in wall thickness in those areas? If so, then we can, we can kind of go from there and say, okay, what does the rest of the pipeline look like, and determine if, what sort of repairs or rehab. It will be repair, rehab, replacement at some point in its life. And so the choices, that will be looked at, I don't remember when in the CIP program, but is, okay, what is the condition of that pipeline? What would it take to, if it does need repairs in the near term, what does that look like? How can we do that in the most cost-effective way, without disrupting the use of the pipeline, right? And at some point, when the pipeline, the larger portion of the pipeline reaches the end of its useful life, and you're maybe facing more of a higher cost lining or replacement project, at that point, you really would want to consider, okay, well, do we continue to invest in this pipeline, or do we try to do something like David alluded to, where maybe we can keep the water up here and we're not putting it out in beneficial use, but maybe we can put it in Boardroom. It's not certain that would be permittable. It's beyond the scope of your current permit exactly. And so those, I think, are the trade-offs in terms of that whole side of the operation, Director Garrett, that you're alluding to, and whether or not Replenish figure goes forward now in its current form or in some, maybe revised form, those issues are the same that BARWA still has to consider and address. And so having less water go through that pipeline could be beneficial to its life. It could reduce BARWA's risk. Those aren't things that we have evaluated yet, but we would be looking at those things as part of the condition assessment. So your concern is noted that there's more to consider as part of the overall operation.
Seems a little irresponsible to be making decisions when we have no idea what that pipe looks like.
Yeah, and if the board is inclined to take this issue up sooner, it's scheduled for 2028, 29.
The master plan is starting next fiscal year, investigation in 28, and then any additional work in 23.
29. So, but if the board's inclined to move that forward, I can work with Christine and we can figure out how to program that a little sooner.
That just seems like it's an important piece.
It would be an important piece to evaluate that line. Yes, it definitely would.
Because it seems like right now we kind of just have our heads in the sand, not knowing what the condition is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my pipes at my house to be like that and just not know.
Right. And most of it is in sand. So that's be fun. So yeah, most definitely something we could bring back to the board to consider moving that forward in the CIP.
I think that's important. So I would like to see that move forward. So we have answers.
Perfect.
So am I hearing then that the desire is to not make any decision as to 1, 2, or 3 without an investigation of the pipeline, which the outfall line, which has been part of this plan project since at least the last 3 years.
I mean, it seems like the responsible thing to do.
But by the same token, since that was not agendized, is it simply an advisement to you to receive?
I mean, the board could.
There has to be a reallocation of funds from another project
Yeah.
to move that outfall up. The scope of works, we have to come back to you to do that.
Yeah, we would just bring back an item. If that's the board's desire, we could bring back an item to move that project forward in the CIP and reallocate some funding from another capital project.
How long would it take to bring back that item?
January.
Yeah, January.
Okay.
I mean, well, January, February, we probably need to get it, work with WC to make sure that we have our scope of work is covered and they're comfortable with what we have on the agenda. But I think we have some.
I'm pretty confident that we have that scope of work outlined because that was part of the capital improvement methodology.
Yeah, so we probably.
So you might need to refine just some wording.
Let's just say January, February at the latest.
I mean, I have 7 grandkids that live up here, so I want to make sure that I'm making good decisions for the future.
And yes, I agree with that 100%.
Dave, there be some issues or search to try.
Yeah. We'll deal with that.
And your thinking is that at the moment we're on track to, if we stay the course as it stands right now, that would be option 2.
No, if we stayed the course if the board took no action today, that would be basically option 3.
Without funding.
Without funding. But it still would be option 3 without funding.
But potentially could the situation look a little different to the general public?
Yeah.
If we were to find out about the outfall line and then we might need to move in a different direction.
That's gonna take a few years. You know,
At least probably, yeah, I mean, the time frame to evaluate that line between getting permits and the investigation work and do that stuff is definitely going to take, I would say, at least a year. Is that?
Of course, service permits would be the critical path, so.
We do,
You're good at getting this now.
yeah, I'm great at getting those now, and actually, underneath our current permit, it does allow us to do maintenance underneath that, and so we would just, I mean, based on what the attorneys are telling me at this point, we have the authority to go in and do maintenance work on the line, and that we consider this as a maintenance work process.
Because you would think that the Forest Service would not want some big gaping hole to bust open and it's spewing everywhere.
You would think that that might be a concern of theirs, but as of yet, we've had a rather large section exposed in a channel
Like 8 or 9 years.
for 8 or 9 years now. Actually, it was before me, so I'm almost 9 now, 9 years here. So they've been, it's at least 10 years, 9-10 years, and every time they look at it, they don't seem to. And by the way, a high pressure gas line that sits right next to it, and it seems to be not as urgent to them. I think it's more urgent, but that was my opinion.
Gas line is the main line that comes to Big Bear. It's a natural gas line. It's right next to it. And it's been exposed
For years.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
years.
scary.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It is.
we tried.
Scary and like irresponsible for the forestry to not recognize that.
Well, and it seemed like every time we, oh yeah, we're striking a deal with somebody to the director of, they change that person. And then we get a new person and we have to start all over again with this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, we got the permit now to fix that piece, but I'm just saying it's, we're a little. I would agree with, I think it was Larry that made that suggestion that might be
So
concerning.
wouldn't it also be true that you could commit to inspecting the line or trying to predict its failure point, et cetera? Meanwhile, the state, as you suggested at least 2 years ago, that within the next 10 years, you thought we might be required to go to tertiary anyway. Well, if we went to tertiary and they told us we couldn't use the outfall line, then now you spent how much money to inspect a line they won't let you use anyway.
Oh, well, just because they say that they usually give you a time frame to switch to tertiary. So it's not like, oh, I need you to do that tomorrow. They would be like, oh, I need you to do that. And they give us 5 years. Usually that's a normal time frame just to meet the requirements to go to
We
a
might
tertiary.
have 5 years to know we won't use it anymore.
5 years to know that we would, I mean, I wouldn't ever suggest that we don't use it unless we find an alternative location to discharge to.
So it still becomes important to know what the condition of the line is.
It does. I mean, and hence why you see it on our CIP.
Yes.
Hence why we've brought it to the board's attention, because we think it's an important feature. And a lot of it was inspired by what we saw in the main line, the force main that was coming from the city. That condition kind of inspired us to look, wait a minute, these lines were put in the same time. And that is concerning to us that even, with it put in the same time, can we expect a similar condition of the line? And again, very difficult to tell in a force main, right? That's the hurdle that we have is this is a force main. It does have some air backs throughout the line, but they're 2-inch openings, usually 2-inch openings. And to get a camera down a 2-inch opening, a camera to travel the distance that we would like to investigate, it might, it will be a challenge. There'll be some challenges with that assessment, for sure. So
So just to recap, we're looking at 1 to 2 years to get an answer on that line.
I would say 1 to 2 year answer is pretty solid, assessment.
And the final design is projected at the end of 27 or 26.
27 is right. It's March.
Spring of 26.
Yeah, spring of 27. So about the same time frame, we would have the assessment and the final design.
That line definitely seems like it should move up so that we're making good decisions. Yeah.
I mean, it's fair to say it's probably old.
It's 50 years old. It was put in 1978, if I remember correctly.
So it's not new.
It's not new.
It's likely bad.
It's likely, well, the problem that you end up with is there's portions of this line that are constantly full, basically from like here to like the, what is it? The landfill, right? That's full. So I wouldn't expect to see a lot of gases building up in there, which would deteriorate the line quicker, right? It's the part going down the hill and the velocity that hits down the hill. I mean, they did already a study. They were looking at using to generate power from the velocity that going down there. Those are the portions that as you know, as an engineer, as your engineer, I'd be more concerned about is the ones that because that can create, huge divots in the internal coating of the line itself.
Erosion at very least.
And the line is a concrete lined, steel, concrete encased.
Yeah. I mean, that would be my big concern.
And I'm just curious if the project did go through, would we have opportunity to investigate the line?
I mean, either way, we would have to do it, but the project doesn't assist us with that investigation.
But we were planning on doing that anyway.
We were doing it either way.
Yeah. So again, when we.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Can I just say one thing?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just don't know how to get your attention. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have been staring at you more.
So I would actually, if this is appropriate, because we're discussing something right now that has been pointed out as not the agenda, that we agendize this, bring it back so we can start to really get in depth more information and discuss regarding this fallout line and what to do. Because this is actually the first time that I've heard, oh, by the way, there's sections of it that have water in it all the time. And also from Lane suggesting that maybe we just inspect one part of it where the highest speed of water goes through, which seems to have, I would think, the most wear in that particular area. So anyways, if we could, my motion would be to bring this particular subject back, not take any action currently right now until we get more information regarding the fallout line.
I would second that. Can we have roll call?
Director Herrick,
Aye.
Chair Segovia,
Aye.
Director Russo, Vice Chair Walsh,
Aye.
and Director Sauer.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So I think we're done with that topic.
We are.
All right, let's move on to comments and announcements.
I have none. The first. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Any other board members?
I'll just say the same thing. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And let's keep our fingers crossed for a little snow. This has been a terrible start to our wet season right now. So keep fingers crossed. We got a change maybe happening Christmas Eve.
Larry, do you have anything you want to say? I would like to say just today's been kind of an eye opener for me of a little bit. I mean, I knew that there's issues with that line going down the hill, but when I think about things like water sustainability, gas line problems potentially, and that line, it's like living up in Big Bear is very fragile. And we need to make sure we're making good decisions for Big Bear.
Agreed.
So we're not doing anything about the Replenish things. We're talking about that. We're doing the line in the 08, I mean, 28, 29.
No, I think we're bringing back discussing the outfall line. That's correct. In January or February.
Yeah, the motion was to do nothing on Replenish Big Bear today and on discussion back in January.
All right. Okay, well then I am gonna adjourn this meeting at 11:40.